The first thing we're going to do to make our plate, to design our linoleum plate, is we're going to take a piece of paper and we're going to trace out the size of our plate so we know what we're working with. And then we're going to draw our design inside that shape. I'm just going to do a simple heart. And maybe I'll make another one. Not so simple, but once you've drawn out your design, you're going to turn it over. You're going to mark out all the areas that have lines with a pencil if you don't have tracing paper. Then you're going to take your design, turn it back over, take your plate or your block, and you may want to cut this out so you have the right, so it lays on the block where you have it drawn out. And you are going to hold it down with one hand. You're going to trace over. You're going to press. You're going to put a little bit of pressure on it so that it comes through. Because there you could see that the pencil mark that you rubbed over is now showing up as you trace. This is the easy way to transfer. Okay. You may want to lift it, hold it down with one end, lift it, and make sure you've transferred everything you can. So now my design is transferred on the block. I'm going to take, sometimes I'll take a marker and I'll just go over those lines again so that I make sure they don't rub off. You might have to look at your drawing. Make sure you have it right. Okay. Now I'm ready to start carving, which I'm going to take my gouge tool and I'm going to get a bench hook. When you start to carve, you're going to make sure that you are carving on a bench hook and not directly on the table. I will show you a better picture of this, but it hooks onto the table so it's flat, not so it's upright, not so it's not flat against the table. And the bar is going to be back here. That prevents you from slipping. This also prevents you from carving into the table. So always on a bench hook, and always carving away from yourself. If you are a lefty, then you're going to carve with your left hand and you're going to hold the plate steady with your right hand. And if you're a righty, you're going to carve with your right hand. Now is the part where you're going to decide, am I carving out the lines or am I carving out all the negative space? If you are carving out either, you want to make sure that your lines are kind of thick for this project. So I'm just going to make my lines a little bit thicker to show you. You don't have to draw them in. You can draw them in with a pencil. It might be easier, but you do want to make sure that you know what you're carving because you will get confused sometimes. So I'm just going to show you by thickening up my lines. I think I'm going to mark out these circles so I know what I'm doing. Okay, I'm going to start by just carving out my heart. So I'm going to carve the lines that I drew. And if you notice, I'm carving away from myself and this hand is behind what I'm carving. So I'm never holding it here because if I slip, I'm going to go right into my hand. Now, if I have to turn my plate, I can do that. You're going to take all these scraps and you are going to throw them out after. So I actually sometimes don't lift my tool and I just move my plate along the line, but I'm always carving away from myself. Now you're not going to carve, you don't have to carve super deep. You don't have to go all the way through and cut through. In fact, some of these are carved on the other side, so you don't want to cut super deep, but you do want to make sure that you take off enough that there's like a little tunnel in your plate, in your linoleum. I want to make this line a little bit thicker So I'm going to go around it. Just going to go close to the edge of it. Whoops, my hand was in the wrong spot. Now you may decide that you want to carve leave all the line and carve everything else, which I'm going to do. I think I'm going to do that in my circle, but I do want to leave a line for my heart. So I'm going to leave everything that I drew, and I'm just going to carve the inside of those spaces. So this would be carving the negative space. That's all the area that doesn't have line work on it. I want to add something to this. I think I'm going to do some lines going out. Stop where that carved line is, otherwise you're going to go through it. You can't erase once you've carved. It's really kind of hard to fix it. And this is going to be one solid piece when I go to cut and when I go to print, and I want it to be a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to put another design in there. Okay, now I'm done with that. I'm ready to print. Make sure your name is on the back. This has been carved already, but make sure your name is on the back so we know whose it is. And we're going to clean up. You're going to take all your scraps, gather them together, and throw them all in the garbage, not on the floor.